Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for all coming in person, and we have over 60 Grand Rounds guests online as well. My name is Ashish Patel. I'm the physician in chief and the pediatric gastroenterologist. It's a real honor and pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Paul Tran this morning. Paul and I have a little bit of history. I was actually one of his first GI attendings when he was doing his pediatric residency at UT Southwestern. I was honored to follow his career as he went to fellowship at Colorado Children's. As many of you know, you do sort of an academic 2 years of work during fellowship. And traditionally, when I was a fellow, it was a few years before that, it was really basic science. You went in the lab and you did basic science. But the evolution of fellowship training now has really encompassed a lot of different forms of academic or scholarly work. And Paul did some amazing work with curriculum development and really honing his skills as an educator at Colorado Children's. In 2022, we were very fortunate to recruit him here as faculty. So he's been here at Phoenix Children's as faculty since 2022. And even then, his role has evolved. He has inserted himself into every corner of education with our medical students, our residents across the 5 schools here in the Valley. So today he's going to be speaking about feedback. And it's a really great presentation. I hope you all enjoy it. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you so much, Ashish. I'm gonna scoot from this. So this is your last chance. You will never see this QR code again. I want to thank Drs. Hartley and Drs. Bavaraju for inviting me. This is a great opportunity to be in front of you today. And I want to talk to you about the F word. And when I say the F word and you see that on the screen, everyone gets a little bit of a visceral reaction. Maybe those that are walking in right now, they're like, what is he talking about? And that same visceral reaction, that gut feeling, is probably the same as when you actually see the word feedback. When someone says, hey, I want to give you feedback, it's time for feedback. It's that same feeling, that gut-wrenching, torquing feeling that you might get if, I don't know, say a college girlfriend came to you and said, Paul, we need to talk. You know, it's a sense of dread, that sense of uncertainty. What is going to happen here? And I want to convince you today that feedback is not a dirty word. I want to illustrate traditional and current approaches to feedback because, let's face it, we've all heard about feedback is a part of learning. But I want to talk about the change in feedback, and I want to discuss aspects of feedback conversations that seem dirty and propose ways to clean them up. Let's talk kale salad. We've all had kale salad or wanted to be the person who likes kale salad. It's healthy, lots of fiber, some saturated fats with the nuts that go in. We have kale salad at lunch today. We feel really good about ourselves. We're sitting outside in the courtyard talking to our friends. Everyone's eating burgers and we're eating our kale salad. We feel great. Then we see patient after patient after patient in clinic. Then we give a grand rounds presentation or a lecture in front of maybe 50 people. And then you have a mentor meeting and you're on Zoom and then maybe it's a mock interview and you're talking like this. You feel really good about yourself. It's a great day. You've been in front of a lot of people. Then you go home, it's bedtime, and you look in the mirror for the first time and realize you have some kale stuck in your teeth. And you think, why the heck did no one tell me I had kale stuck in my teeth all day? And you would have been embarrassed. I would have been really embarrassed if Ashish said, hey, you got a poppy seed or some kale stuck in your teeth right before you get in front of people. But it's a lot more mortifying, 100 times more, if not more, to realize that you've been carrying this around all day, showing it to the world. This bright green piece of kale for the world to see. Someone should have said something to you. Guess what? We do it in medicine all the time. It's called Feedback Friday. The kale salad of medicine. I know who's squirming in their seats right now. I'm not going to call out people who work with big teams in the hospital. I'm not going to say anything about Feedback Friday, but in pediatrics and internal medicine, I, as a student, experienced something called Feedback Friday, where you start with an attending on a Monday, they maybe finish with you on a Friday. So you work with them all week, you don't hear anything, and on Friday they say, it's time for Feedback Friday, to a room and met with silence. And everyone in the room is just sitting there, waiting their turn to be marched out one by one to a private place outside the room where the attending looks at you and starts with, how do you think you did? And then they march back in and the next person goes, and it's honestly dreadful in every sense of the word. You dread it. And guess what? It's like Feedback Friday, or Feedback Friday is like kale salad. Because a lot of times my experience on Friday, I heard, hey, your presentations suck. I kind of wish you had told me that on Monday, so I could have worked on it on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, and then on Thursday. Why did you not tell me? And then guess what? That person goes off service, and my last impression with them is a sucky presentation. And I could have done something about this. So why do we do this? Why do we continue to eat kale salad and not tell people when they have kale in their teeth? It makes feedback like waiting in line at the DMV. It's drudgery. It's something you have to do when you need to get your renewals. No one wants to go to the DMV. Everyone there is like, maybe they're like one step happier than the people waiting in line at the lost luggage line at the airport, but it's not much better. And it makes feedback a monotonous, dreadful affair rather than an engaging process. It makes it a once-a-year event instead of a day-to-day thing. Let's change Feedback Friday to Feedback Every Day. And what have people tried to do in the past? Traditional feedback, teachers appraise performance. They provide appraisal data. Here's what I see. Here's why your presentations aren't good. And then the learner rises to the occasion and says, I'm going to improve my performance based on what you tell me. It's very unidirectional. The attending, the preceptor, the educator tells you something and then you do it. It's passive. All I'm doing is I'm receiving what you tell me. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be a good student. I'm going to be a good resident. I'm going to be a great fellow. And I'm going to do what you tell me to improve my performance. Does it work? Does it improve performance? No. Many studies have shown learners are not engaged enough with the process. Why? Because it's passive, because it's unidirectional. The Pendleton model of feedback, which a lot of medical education has talked about, is a model where a learner says, these are my strengths. And then a preceptor says, I agree or disagree. And then the learner says, these are my weaknesses. And the learner says, I agree or disagree. It's not much better. So there is a guru of feedback. Yeah, it's super, super niche in medical education, but a guru named Subha Ramani. She's an internist at Harvard, at the Brigham and Women's, probably published 20, 30 papers on feedback and different feedback contexts. And a quote here, in the end, the quality and impact of feedback should be measured by its influence on recipient behavior change, professional growth, and quality of patient care, not on the skills of the feedback provider. It doesn't matter how good you are at feedback if it falls on deaf ears. If I don't care to hear what you say, I don't care if you are the best speaker in the world. You have gone to every conference. I don't care. It's not going to affect me. So at the end of the day, she posited with several co-authors The center should be the learner's performance improvement. The end result is someone actually improving. That's the end result. That's what makes patient care better. That's what makes you professionally better. Your performance. And there are three things that go into it. Recipient factors, who's receiving it, who's giving it, delivery factors, and then the environment, the culture. I think about it like if you want to grow a citrus tree here in the desert, you need to think about not only the plant, not only the soil, not only the planter. You need all three. All three things go into making that plant flourish. So we need to think about performance improvement at the end of the day. So all these seminars that are like, Paul, you can give feedback better. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to give feedback better. That's only one small part of it. So we're aiming for only a third of the entire structure. So there are newer frameworks out there. Based on my research, and I've done quite a bit of reading because this is such a cool topic, there's frameworks out there like the R2C2 model, build rapport and relationship, explore reactions, explore content, understanding, coach for performance change. This was made actually for physicians. And then they said, hey, you know what? We should use this for learners. If we're trying to improve ourselves as partners, maybe we should use this for learners too. So it's really like, tell me your experience. Let me establish a relationship. Tell me your experience and explore reactions. Is there anything weird about what I told you? Is there anything that surprised you? Then you see content. If you're going to do anything, first, I got to make sure it doesn't make sense to you. Is there anything that didn't make sense? And then you coach for performance change. Let's say we're going to do something about this. What's the first thing you're going to do? What's one small thing that you're going to do for this? I don't want to go into this too much because I want to explore not a way for you to get feedback better, but I want to look at the entire picture because I want to help everyone listening in, not just my peers, not just the learners, but anyone listening who says, you know, the feedback that I get is not the best. And I honestly want to get better. So this is something that I came up with. The roadmap for the rest of the talk, I want to talk to you about the relationship at the center of everything. The relationship first, and then four things: feedback delivery, feedback conversation, feedback implementation, and then feedback seeking. I think we forget about the last part, feedback seeking. So let's clean up dirty feedback. I had my first rotation, one of my first rotations, a meaningful rotation, was OB-GYN, and I started on gyn-onc. And I remember I was told stuff on my evals at the end of that rotation, like when you sing or hum in the OR, you come off as uninterested. No one told me that. No one understood the context that the entire team was singing and humming, and I was just joining along because I felt like I belonged to the team. If you didn't want me to seem uninterested, why didn't you tell me right then? Feedback is dirty. Let's clean it up. First, feedback seems cold and mandatory. Attendings have to give me feedback. It's a requirement on my rotation. I'm supposed to submit an eval form, and you have to fill it out. Otherwise, your credentials are at risk. Otherwise, your salary might be at risk if you get censored enough. So it's just mandatory, so it comes off cold. The relationship is core. Relationship first, educational alliance. The educational alliance, this underpins everything that I'm going to tell you. What is it? It's based off the therapeutic alliance in psychotherapy. And that is based and looks at the relationship between a therapist and their patient. The components of a relationship or a therapeutic alliance are three things. Number one, a mutual goal of therapy. Number two, a shared understanding and agreement of how to achieve that goal. And after that, the last thing, how much does the patient like, trust, and value their therapist? So they looked at this, researchers in 2015 proposed the educational alliance based on this principle, where the learner is like the patient in the therapeutic alliance. So same thing in the educational alliance, 3 components. Number 1, how much is there an expressed goal? How clear is the expressed goal? Number 2, is there a shared agreement on how to reach that goal? And number 3, does the learner like, value, and trust their preceptor, their educator, their teacher? This is recipient centric. In the therapeutic alliance, it is not the therapist's understanding or perception of how effective the alliance is. They tend to overestimate how effective they are. I'm a great therapist. It's the patient that determines how good the therapeutic alliance is. Likewise, it is the learner. The learner. Remember, the center was learner improvement. It is the learner who determines how good the educational alliance is. How well does this person who's teaching me or giving me feedback know me, know my goals, invest in me, want to actually help me achieve my goals, and have my best interests at heart, actually care about me? If not personally, then at least professionally. And when a learner is thinking that, they're going through something called credibility judgments. How credible is the person talking to me? Essentially, it's the filter in your head. When someone's giving you feedback, you're like, how much should I listen to you? In a qualitative interview-based study of 34 residents, psychiatry residents at the University of British Columbia, they mentioned 2 things that make a preceptor or a mentor credible. Number 1, makes a lot of sense for all of us in the room and online. How good of a clinician are they? How good of a role model are they for me to emulate as I become a physician, as I become a clinician? Do I want to be like them clinically? But the other thing that we don't really intuitively think about is investment in the educational alliance. 3 things. Lots of rules of 3 here. Authenticity, commitment to growth, learning about identity. 2 of those big factors. And the third thing was positive outlook. Does this person view me positively, or do they view me negatively? Am I annoying to them, or do they think me as annoying, or do they view me as a future colleague? And when I think about the people who worked with me, that made me promise to myself, I will either be like you when I grow up, or I won't be like you when I grow up. It was the people who I promised I would be like treated me like a colleague. If not then I see you as a colleague in 5 years, in 10 years. So I'm going to treat you as such. I'm going to treat you with respect and professionally. The people who I did not value, trust, like, were the people who treated me like just a medical student, just a resident, just a fellow, just a note jockey, just an order jockey, just someone to give long presentations on rounds that make you kind of shuffle your feet and want to go to the next patient. I was just. So you might be thinking, oh, this is great. I think you're making a good case for it, but there's not enough time. Sorry, but I'm working with this person. I have a preceptor day for a half day of clinic. There's not enough time to build a relationship and an educational alliance. I'll tell you there is. Here's a practical way. Wise feedback. This comes from my favorite author right now, Adam Grant. He's an organizational psychologist at Wharton. And he has written a lot of my favorite books: Hidden Potential, Give and Take, Originals, Think Again. And he introduced this idea of wise feedback, which is just incredible. Because researchers knew that mistrust is what really affects feedback. When you don't trust who is giving you feedback, it is ineffective. So they said, well, we know that the highest levels of mistrust, at least in students that they were working with, were across the racial divide. And they measured it. They looked at white and black students in a suburban middle school. The highest level of mistrust were across black students with predominantly white teachers. And they said, can we just sit here or can we do something about this with even mistrust? Can we help these learners with better feedback? So this was an incredibly elegant study. They had 7th graders write an essay on their personal hero, 5 paragraphs. I was like, man, I don't remember the last time I wrote a 5-paragraph essay. Maybe a personal statement, but 5 paragraphs on your hero. They would submit it, and that was mandatory. They had to submit an essay, and teachers would then red pen it with comments like, what is a hero? You're writing idol here. What does that mean? What's the difference between that and hero? And that was it. What they could do, they had the option of submitting a revision. Wasn't mandatory. And researchers, it was a double-blinded study, researchers, after the teachers would red pen, would put one of 2 post-it notes. Again, blinded to student and teacher. And handwritten. The teachers had written them before, they just didn't know which student was getting what. The control, I am giving you this feedback. I'm giving you these comments as feedback for your paper. That's it. Just kind of a statement. Wise feedback, which was the intervention, were 19 powerful words. I am giving you these comments because I have very high expectations, but I'm confident you will meet them. And I think about that, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of powerful, but also like a little scary, like very high expectations, but then you're confident in me. I don't know how to feel. Well, the students showed those with wise feedback. Now, this was across all levels of mistrust. You saw the highest results actually in the highest levels of mistrust. Those with wise feedback were more likely to submit that optional revision, and not only more likely to engage in the process of feedback, the feedback was effective because the quality of their responses was significantly better than those who did not get wise feedback. So 19 words, that's all it took for students, 7th graders, to engage in feedback and improve their outcomes. That's how you can start to build an educational alliance. Okay, love it. Educational alliance, but we don't have a good culture of feedback here. We just don't engage in it at our institution, at our school, at our program. One thing you can do addressing the relationship is something called upward feedback. Upward feedback is what it kind of sounds like. It's giving feedback up. You know how sometimes we say stuff rolls downhill? Well, we're trying to punt it back uphill. We're giving feedback to our supervisors, our preceptors, our attendings. That same gut-wrenching sensation in your stomach is coming back. I'm feedback to my attendings, huh? Okay. Well, if you think about it, we are lifelong learners who get less and less and less feedback as we go. Medical students get evals, have to write evals, complete evals almost every day. Residents have to do it at least once a week, maybe rotation. Fellows, maybe a couple times a quarter. As an attending, semi-annual review, maybe annual review. Maybe I get some learner feedback collated to me, maybe I don't. And I get patient reviews. That's about it. I don't really get meaningful feedback in professional development though. So you can imagine, okay, if I'm getting less feedback as I go, it's not like I'm numb to it. I don't want to give feedback. It's just less of my day-to-day. Feedback is just not on my mind because I don't get it. Well, okay, so let's just ask all of our learners, our med students, our residents, fellows, we want feedback every single day. Well, you can imagine, you're like, no, I don't. I'm not gonna do that. You know, the students in the room, I can see you. You're like, you hold my destiny in the palm of your hand. I'm not going to give you any feedback other than you are awesome, man. I'm not going to give John McGreevy feedback. He holds my future in his grasp. And they studied this in residents and faculty at a premier institution in the United States, the Brigham and Women's, Harvard Medical School. They interviewed residents and faculty, and residents said, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give feedback to my superiors because I don't want adverse consequences. And if I feel safe, it's not going to do anything. They don't change. So why waste my time and energy? I'm not going to give feedback. But they did say, you know what? If attendings emphasize mutual growth and they regularly sought feedback, I think I'd be more inclined, even though hesitant, I'd be more inclined to give feedback. So think about this. If you want to change the environment and culture of feedback, you have to model the very behavior you want other people to demonstrate. If I'm encouraging you to seek feedback and I don't do it myself, I'm not being a very good model and someone that you want to emulate. I'm not investing in the educational alliance. So in a culture where people are consistently asking for feedback and it's from the top, you're modeling, oh, okay, the top does it. I'm a lowly peon, I'm a note jockey, I can do it too. You're not just all note jockeys, by the way, that was asterisk. Well, okay, feedback is non-specific, it's vague. You can shout it out, anyone in the room. What's the best example you know of vague, non-specific feedback? Read more. Good student, good resident, did well. Read more. What the heck does read more mean? Then we do the compliment sandwich that everyone knows. Compliment sandwich is a genuine compliment. The constructive criticism, the genuine compliment, but no one cares about the compliment. Everyone just hears the meat in the middle. Everyone hears the but. You did well, but you didn't, but you did well. Even if meant earnestly, even if we want to couch our feedback, you're not paying attention to the compliments. And they studied the feedback sandwich. They've studied everything. They looked at third-year medical students who were submitting SOAP notes and got 3 types of sandwiches. The feedback sandwich, compliment, criticism, compliment, the open face sandwich, which was criticism, compliment, and then the naked sandwich, which was just criticism. Guess what? Across all 3 sandwiches, choose off the menu, medical students said, that was really helpful. I actually think that the feedback sandwich was really helpful. But it wasn't. It didn't improve outcomes. Regardless of the type of sandwich that you got versus no feedback, the objective changes of the SOAP note that the people were looking for, the researchers were looking for, didn't happen. So people didn't engage in the feedback process. So it didn't help with engagement. And there's something called politeness concepts. We all know this. Politeness concepts, vague, non-specific language to protect ego and save face because I want to be nice. And that is a reputation that pediatrics in particular has compared to other specialties. And we need to do something about that. Pediatrics, pediatric residents, pediatricians are too nice. Nice is not kind. There's a difference. Nice means you did well, even when someone didn't. That's not honest. And sometimes to be kind, I have to be honest. But in kindness to you, because I want to support you, I'm trying to help you, and you can deliver it gracefully, with compassion, but it's not always nice, and there's a difference there. An example of that is they looked at evaluations of 3rd, 4th year medical students and residents, and especially for medical students, when they said, good student, in interviews afterwards, the educator said, well, underperforming. Good means underperforming. If I meant good, I would have said excellent. But I didn't want them to read underperforming. I wanted them to save face, so I said good. Well, guess what? Now you're telling your learner, I don't mean what I say to you. When I tell you you're good, I don't actually mean it. I mean it, you're underperforming. I'm trying to be nice and save face. So we're smothering these compliment sandwiches in gravy, and none of it is good. None of it tastes good. None of it's effective. So how do we change to the delivery? How do you get specific goals? Create mutual goals prior to feedback. The more specific goal you have, the more specific feedback can be. If I know you're working on something, I can give you feedback towards that. I have this specific goal in mind. Could you observe me and give me feedback for that goal in particular? Maybe globally as well, but I'm really trying to work on this. I know this is a weak spot for me. My father-in-law teaches business, and he says with his mentees, additionally, something I thought was interesting, he says, after he sets goals, when I see you heading away from that goal or deviating from that goal, how do you want me to bring it up to you? I thought was interesting. But it's all in that conversation of goals beforehand. And I want to introduce something that you've probably all heard in popular culture, but something called the growth mindset here. Fixed versus growth mindset. No talk on feedback would be complete without talking about the growth mindset. And really, the fixed mindset is my skills, beliefs, knowledge, attitudes, intelligence, talents. They're all fixed. They were given to me and I'm capped. The growth mindset is all of these things can be improved upon. I can actually change them. Maybe not to the degree that I really want, but I can actually change them from what I think that limited ceiling is. So when we talk about goals, people who have the fixed mindset have something called a performance orientation. They set goals that validate positive assessments and avoid negative ones. I'm going to set easy goals, like softball goals that I can knock out of the park. I want to present in a SOAP format. Okay, like, awesome, you did a great job. Because I want you to see that I performed well. I'm performing. And I don't want anything that makes me look like I'm not performing well. So I set a goal to avoid a negative one. Well, what is the growth mindset? Learning orientation. I set goals to achieve personal development and improve mastery. I will never be a master at clinical reasoning. I will never be a master at blank. But I'm going to set goals to work towards that, because I'm going to set a goal, work towards that, set another goal that's just above that, and I'm going to continue to work towards mastery, because mastery is a moving target. I will never get to mastery, but I'm going to approach it. So you set goals to improve, to grow. I want to say that people who, myself included, you don't have to have a growth mindset in everything that you do, in every facet of life. There are areas that I have a very fixed mindset. And I know for myself, in those areas where I have a fixed mindset, feedback, I take it as a blow to my identity. Oh, that doesn't feel good. Paul, your presentation was too drawn out, too boring. Oh, that doesn't feel good. My identity as an educator. Whereas a growth mindset would be, that was an opportunity to improve this talk. That was an opportunity for me to get better as a speaker. Hopefully I can make some tweaks and get even better, 1% better next time. Well, feedback's a passive process though. I like what you're saying, but it's passive. I still, for the most part, I don't want to speak up during this feedback process. I'm just going to have it delivered to me. Let's change now, moving to feedback conversation. Reflection and coaching. You cannot have a good feedback conversation to affect improvement and performance unless you have reflection, self, and coaching others. What is coaching? It's based on educational philosophy and observation. So those of you in the room who don't know this, I was a figure skater for 10 years. We moved to Colorado Springs to train at the Olympic Training Center. And I was working on triple axles and triple triples, little humble brag. But one of the things about figure skating is we're in the Summer Olympics now, but like diving, you can see this too. to get rotation, you have to really cross your arms like a mummy, really tight. And the tighter your arms are, the faster you can spin. Something about angular momentum, something physics there. Anyway, there's a while that I was working on triples and my elbow kept going out like this. And I couldn't really feel it. And over and over and over again, I wasn't landing and my elbow was going out. My dad, who knows nothing about figure skating, kept saying, Paul, your elbow's out. Your elbow's out. Your elbow's out. Do something about your elbow. It's out. I keep seeing it sticking out. I was like, whatever, you don't know anything about skating. Then he videotaped me. He went to the rink with me and videotaped me. With that videotape, he was like, here's objective observation. Here's a video of you. Look at your arm. It looks so weird. Every piece, like you can see it sticking out. And then I realized with what he showed me and then doing the jump, oh, my elbow's out. And then I realized that when I put my elbow in, oh, wow, I started landing the jump. So what did my dad do there without knowing anything about figure skating? He facilitated my own reflection. He helped me with my own light bulb moment of my elbow's out to improve self-assessment. He helped me recognize my elbow being out. So then when my elbow was out, I could recognize it for myself without him having to tell me, without a video having to tell me. So what is really coaching? It's really useful for developing technical skills. What coaching is saying to someone, you don't see your blind spots. That's why they're blind spots. I'm going to help you recognize your blind spots so over time you can recognize and fix your own blind spots. That's what a coach is. And if we move the relationship and the conversation to one of coaching, I think that changes the mindset. Instead of assessor, instead of judge, it's blind spotter, coach. Okay. I like it. Kind of tracking, but feedback I get is not really helpful. It's not relevant. It's not useful. It's like, it's too much in the atmosphere. It's too high level, and I need something tangible. Well, implementation, moving to our roadmap, implementation next, we have to develop a plan. So what is an action plan? Well, you create a specific goal. You have the goal beforehand, and then you use that specific goal to be even more concrete in how you're going to achieve that goal or move and progress. What steps you're going to take, when you're going to assess progress, and how you're going to say you achieved that goal or made progress on that goal. So with a lot of learners listening, here's one that I thought of. What's something that comes up over and over and over again for medical students and even residents? I need you to think about develop a more comprehensive differential. It's very limited to kind of what you think is going on and like the most likely things, but you're missing stuff in the emergency department, in the ICU, if you're senioring wards. You can't have missed things, or at least not be thinking about things that you could miss. So one specific action plan is this. You know what? I'm really struggling with developing a differential diagnosis that's not just buzzword heavy, and that's just not just like 3 things I randomly thought of, or I remember on first aid from way back taking step 1. I'm gonna, for every patient that I see from now on in clinic with you this week, I'm gonna come up with 3 differentials for every single chief complaint. The most likely, the most common, and the most dangerous or most urgent. And I just want to get that framework for every single chief complaint that I see. And you know what? Can you give me feedback on that? And also, I'm going to know I'm going to make progress when we get to the end of the week and you're like, yeah, every patient, you gave me 3 diagnoses based on that framework. So you lay it out, and it requires reflection. But this is the great thing. It's a conversation. So you're not coming up with it on your own. This is where having that pre-feedback conversation of like, how do I even get there? How do I even get better differentials? Someone can help you with that. So an action plan can help. You can renew and revisit. The last time we discussed working on this, by the next time we should see this. Great if you have a longitudinal clinic preceptor. Great if you are on the wards with attending for an extended period of time. Even 5 days is enough. But heck, if you're in clinic 1/2 day, hey, for the next patient, I want to do this. By the last patient, I want to be able to do this. Last one. Well, I wish I got feedback overall. I mean, I would take vague, non-specific, I would take whatever you got, better than nothing, better than like a thumbs up as they're walking out the door. I wish I got any sort of feedback. Seeking. Ask for advice. Feedback seeking. This is for every single person listening. In that study at the Brigham and Women's, that they mentioned the politeness concepts between residents and faculty, this was amazing. Of the participants, a good number were interns, second year and third year internal medicine residents. And the interns, let me give you a quote. One intern was quoted when talking about feedback. Intern year is tough. You don't have the bandwidth to process feedback. You're just holding on for dear life and just trying to get through the day. People don't, this is great. You can inspire all you want during a grand rounds talk or any sort of modules. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to survive. I'm keeping my head above water. I can't engage in the process. I can't ask for feedback. I'm just trying to survive. Well, interesting thing about that study is the second and third year residents, almost to a T, lamented the fact that they didn't ask for feedback enough. And as they were approaching independent practice and having the anxieties of being competent enough to be on their own, they actually went out of their way to seek more and more and more feedback and said, I wish I had done this when I was an intern because I already have some bad habits. And it's not too late to change, but man, I wish I had known about this before. So I hope that encourages you. It's not too late and it's never too early to seek feedback. How do you do it? Ask for advice. This is the real Benjamin Franklin, by the way. Benjamin Franklin, as a wise philosopher, Michael Scott once said, one of our presidents, said that he that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he whom you yourself have obliged. What does that mean? If you think you can get in someone's good graces by doing them favors, Benjamin Franklin says, actually, no. If you have them do favors for you, you actually have a better relationship with them, paradoxically. Because think about this. In feedback, Adam Grant says, instead of seeking feedback, you're better off asking for advice because feedback tends to focus on how well you did last time and advice shifts attention to how you can do better next time. If you come to me, Paul, I want some feedback. Oh, okay, you did well, good job. You know, I got to remember all these things I talked about, but asking for feedback of anyone still stirs, no matter how comfortable you are, stirs some discomfort. But if you went to me and you said, hey, I need some advice. Ooh, I feel really important. Oh, thank you. Like, if you ask me for advice, it means that you elevate me. My stature is elevated in your eyes, or I think I perceive it. You trust me enough to ask me for advice. When I give you advice, I'm investing in you. I want my advice to succeed. I want my advice to bear fruit. Because if you succeed with my advice, it makes me look better. Or at least it makes me feel better. I helped someone. They got better with my advice. So asking for advice actually is a really nice way to change that conversation when you are seeking feedback and how to improve. I want to get better. I want to be a really good sub-I in blank. Hey, I really want to get to residency, just forgetting the logistics. Like, I know those are going to be barriers. I just want to have my blank critical reasoning, my communication skills set. so I don't have to worry about that. What advice would you give me to get there? And here's one last thing. When you ask for advice, when you get feedback, remember that, I mean, you all know it. Remember that it's not going to be given the way that you want to hear it the vast majority of the time. I need it smothered. Actually, I like the politeness concepts you mentioned. I need it smothered in politeness concepts because I can't handle critical feedback right now. Sorry, you can't change the way that someone delivers it to you all the time. You're just, that's kind of like for the professional world. Like you get what you get sometimes. I can't change what someone writes about me in the moment online. I can change how I respond to it. I can write a polite letter saying, I don't know where this is coming from. I'm sorry, please change this. I can't change the way it's delivered. And remember this, that feedback is a gift. If you view feedback as a gift, just remember, you don't have to like every gift. Not every gift is useful to you. Not every gift is something that you're going to enjoy, use every day. You're just going to regift it. You're going to toss it. You're going to like, I love that blender that you gave me. You also gave me a blender 5 years ago. I'm not saying that from personal experience or anything. Gifts are something you can choose to use or not. But if you view feedback as a gift, no matter how it's wrapped, you can be like, okay, I'm going to seek more and more gifts. I'm going to get more and more gifts. The more gifts that you get, the more discerning you will be of how useful it is to you. Practical takeaways at the end of our time together. If you're a learner watching this, I would love to improve at blank. What advice would you give me to achieve this? Set specific goals. Set specific action plans when we're working on those goals. Ask for advice. And the educators, wise feedback. I'm giving you this feedback because I have high expectations and I'm confident you will meet them. It comes off very empty if you're actually not confident that they'll meet them. So get yourself confident by helping them meet them. Embrace the educational alliance. And then view yourself more as a coach. I'm a coach for our clinic today. I'm your coach. I'm going to try to find some blind spots and try to help you recognize that the next time. This might be the last time you're with me in GI clinic, the last time you see GI patients like this. I'm going to have some blind spots. So when you see that GI patient on the floor in the ED, you can recognize them. Overall, feedback isn't dirty. The F word we can use, just this F word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. We can certainly open it for some questions. I'm going to check the chat as well. Does anyone have any questions here?
I think the other reason to empower the asking for feedback is not everybody trained generationally in a time when feedback was something that was part of it. It was like, if I wasn't getting yelled at, I assumed I was doing it right, or it was very direct, just tell me what I did, and then I'm gonna just work on it. So I think as educators and as faculty, it's our responsibility to sort of stay current with what practices are, and so I appreciate the current details, but I also think that even adds more evidence to the fact that it's a two-way.
Absolutely.
Yes, in the back. Oh, hey, David. And so those, for those online, Dr. Perry just made a comment that as you're seeking advice, find a wide swath of it, and find the people that you trust. I think Paul mentioned that as well. Trust is the foundation for those of us giving advice, making sure that the people we are giving advice to feel that sense of trust or confidence in who they're hearing it from, and seeking it, from a variety of people. I think there was a question.
I
online.
wanted to address that 1 second.
Yeah.
And I agree and I think that really depends on reflection. Like the advice that you get, you have to reflect on. Is this concordant with what other people say or what I have heard from similar perspectives or maybe different perspectives? If it is different, why? What is the rationale behind this? And as you actually reflect, you can see, okay, again, that discernment comes with, oh, I'm recognizing this. It's the recognizing the gift that's useful or not. That requires, it's not just one gift. It's not just one person's advice. It is a perspective.
Well, how do you, I think, touched on these two concepts. So there's kind of a two-part question, but how do you resolve how do you empower the learner to make that switch from, I want advice on something that I'm already an expert on because I see we have a limited time together and I need to perform well for you because I'm going to ask you for a letter or you pull the power of my evaluation or whatever that happens to be. So so the first part of the question is like, how do you empower the learners to actually make that switch in being like, okay, these are things I'm good at and move. The other is then how it's on the faculty side, right? So how do you, as a faculty member, say, yeah, Paul, you're actually really good at making differentials already. And I actually don't think that's a good goal for you. And moving to help move your learner along.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the question really is both perspectives of how do you get a learner to recognize essentially what they're already good at might not be the best place to divert attention to, and likewise on the faculty standpoint, how to help someone when you're getting a goal that's like, man, you're already doing really well at that. I think this is more of a deficiency or this is a blind spot. I think personally, one of the things is when you go back to that educational alliance, how much does the learner know me, or how much does the educator know me, know my interests, my goals, and want to invest me to get there? I think I bring it back to the overarching goal. Truly. If I think about someone in GI who wants no part of GI, that's perfectly fine. I mean, you can ignore the best field in the world, but the big thing is, what is your goal? Truly, what is your goal? I want to be an intensivist. I want to be an intensivist. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to see these failure to thrive malnutrition babies as much in the ICU. No. Well, one of the things that you might see, an approach to this is electrolyte, fluid management, refeeding syndrome. You have cardiac effects now of refeeding syndrome. These are things that are tangible that you will see that might be related to what I think is part of this milieu, part of this condition. And yeah, you might not see the patient in this context, but if you do see a patient that's so severe, how then can you approach knowing the principles of you're stabilizing to get to a certain point, right? Where I can see them again, or someone else can see them again in clinic. So I think relating to the goal overall is really helpful. And then I think that's the conversation there of what really is a way to break down those big goals that you have into more manageable ones. If differentials are really big, but I want to appear like my care of patients, my goal is care of patients, my differentials is really good. Well, how are you communicating those differentials to a family? Maybe communication's a big deficiency. you know, part of thinking of the differential is it's great when you can present it here on rounds. I really like the way you're talking to me about it, but communication is a big deficiency. Let's talk about ways that you are presenting it to a family. Let's talk about ways that this might come across as like you haven't thought about it like this. A blind spot is that though you're very clearly talking about this, a family's questioning if you are, because it sounds like you're just giving a plan. I see how thoughtful you are. Let's think of some goals and ways to apply that actually in the clinic room or in the hospital room with the patient. Yeah, Roger.
Kind of going on the thing, I think it's really helpful when you set like expectations on what you're supposed to be doing at the level of your training. So like you do my ones, should be working on differential and like thinking like as we spending more time to that side, it's like that before versus like if you're in second, third year, maybe you're thinking the next step, like what happens if this goes wrong with my first bit? And like, what about for district planning, like building that kind of level? I think helps to bring that rotation.
Yeah. Rojan's comment is really helpful, especially for learners, residents to hear expectations of their level. What is expected of a PGY1, a PGY2, a PGY3, and you can use that in your goal setting, in your beginning conversations. One of the things that I love practically to recommend is when you're meeting someone and working with someone, hey, what is your idea of a really good rep blank? What is your, like, what, or you can word that in whatever way you want. What does a really efficient, effective, thorough senior look like? If you hear the expectations, or at least the exemplar, then you can say, okay, well, I know for a fact maybe I'm not one of those things, and you can work on a goal to that. So one way you can do it is not everyone's going to give you expectations. I'll say the minority of people are going to give you expectations. So you do not just seek advice, but then you're asking up front, what are your expectations? You clarify those expectations too. So it is a conversation both ways. A really great point. Yeah, John.
Second question, I think one of the important things you brought up is kind of a culture around feedback. And one of the things I've been interested in of late, and wondered if you found any literature on, do we sign out learners like we sign out patients? You know, when we hand off, it's like, you know, Paul, I've been working with Rojan all week. This is what we've been working on. This is where you start. Have you found anything in that sort of realm of
Sign out like all the social and exposure history? Yeah, we do. We do, and we should. We should, and it shouldn't be they are great. Hey, they are running rounds, and it seems like efficiency is something that's been lagging a little bit. We've been running late, and I think it's because of this conversation. Based on my observation, what do you think's going on? Is it a patient thing? Is it a talking a lot? Is it too many? Is Paul the GI attending on and doing way too many soapbox rants in between patient rooms? What is the actual thing here? If it is a factor of whoever's running it, the person you're talking about, hey, what are ways that you can think of based on my experience, something that you can talk about? We have those conversations. I think we should have more of those conversations, but compliment sandwich, but those should have been communicated to that person. Hey, I talked with a senior about blank. We have a mutual understanding. They are working on this. I really need your help in working with them this week. That is the best way to do it. If we're just back talking and not telling the person, it's all moot. Doesn't matter. Thanks, Sean. I think we're over time.
Thank you guys for joining again. If you could just use the QR code and fill out a quick eval. I think I was promised it's only one question. Is Paul great? Yes or no? And then yes, but that you can add them. I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you. You guys have a good day.